See, the way it happened, our helicopter was rising about 30, 40 feet above the ground. Our swirling blades cut into a plane, a little plane that was taking off. The plane exploded. We crashed to the tarmac, and when I wake up in the hospital...
Old Hollywood shimmered with glamour, but danger was never far. Some stars survived accidents that nearly ended their lives, yet they refused to fade. Today, we revisit the moments that almost stopped their careers and the resilience that kept their legends alive.
So bold one you are. And who gave you leave to be kissing me?
So you can talk.
Yes, I can, I will, and I do.
Victor Mature. Victor Mature was known for his commanding presence, the kind of leading man who brought strength and personality to epics like Samson and Delilah. But in 1950, while filming on location in Montana for a project then known as Wild Winds, he faced an unexpected setback. During a break from shooting, Mature was involved in a motorcycle mishap that left him with injuries significant enough to halt production. Contemporary newspaper reports, including notes in the New York Times, briefly mentioned his hospitalization and recovery period. For an actor whose early career often demanded physical intensity, the incident became a quiet turning point. Mature returned to work, but he began choosing roles more thoughtfully, focusing less on action-heavy parts and more on characters shaped by voice, presence, and personality. He didn't just overcome a difficult moment, he evolved because of it, showing that resilience in Hollywood could be as powerful as any on-screen performance. Guy Williams. Before he became the beloved face of Disney's Zorro, Guy Williams was just another actor trying to break into Hollywood and spending countless hours perfecting the horsemanship that would someday define him. In 1953, during a practice session, disaster struck. His horse suddenly bolted, Williams lost his balance, and his foot became trapped in the stirrup. He was dragged across the training grounds before handlers finally reached him. The accident left him with a serious shoulder injury and a scar that stayed with him for life, a quiet mark of how unpredictable on-set preparation could be, even for talented athletes. But Williams refused to give up. He healed, trained harder than ever, and only a few years later stepped into the role that made him a legend. As Zorro, he became known for elegance, athleticism, and warmth, qualities shaped, in part, by the early setback he refused to let defeat him. His story is a reminder that sometimes the road to heroism begins with a fall. Maureen O'Hara. Maureen O'Hara was known for her fiery spirit, proud independence, and the fearless way she threw herself into every role. But during the filming of The Quiet Man, 1952, she suffered a real injury that few viewers ever knew about. In one of the film's heated physical moments with John Wayne, O'Hara swung to strike him for a slap scene, and Wayne instinctively blocked the blow. The impact snapped her wrist back, and she later revealed what happened. "Yes, I cracked a bone in my wrist," she admitted when asked about the incident years afterward. Her hand swelled badly, and she tried to hide it at first, but the production moved on. After X-rays confirmed the fracture, O'Hara returned to set and finished the picture without complaint, determined not to slow the work or appear fragile. That quiet toughness, disciplined, professional, and entirely her own, was the same strength that made Maureen O'Hara one of Hollywood's most unforgettable leading ladies. Caren Marsh Doll. Caren Marsh Doll, sometimes credited early in her career as Caren Marsh, was a talented dancer and MGM performer best known for standing in for Judy Garland during rehearsals and musical sequences. In July 1949, she boarded a small commercial flight on what should have been an ordinary trip. But shortly before landing near Los Angeles, the aircraft suffered a severe malfunction and crashed outside Burbank, one of California's worst air accidents that year. Marsh Doll was among the few survivors. She sustained serious injuries to her foot and hip, spending weeks in the hospital and many months in recovery. Doctors doubted she would ever dance again. But she proved them wrong. Through grit and discipline, she regained mobility and eventually devoted her life to teaching dance, preserving the artistry that had shaped her youth at MGM. Her story is a quiet reminder that Hollywood's resilience didn't always belong to household names. Sometimes it belonged to the dedicated artists behind the scenes. Ray Milland. Ray Milland, the Welsh-born actor who would later win an Oscar for The Lost Weekend, faced a serious setback early in his career. In 1939, while filming the drama Hotel Imperial, he took part in a horseback sequence that required careful timing. During one take, the saddle slipped, sending Milland crashing to the ground and into a nearby stone barrier. He suffered a head injury and a badly bruised arm, requiring a short stay in the hospital. For a moment, the studio wondered whether he would regain the confidence needed for physically demanding roles. But Milland returned to set after a few weeks, determined to prove himself. His persistence paid off. Only a few years later, he rose to prominence as one of Hollywood's most respected leading men. The incident may not be as dramatic as some of old Hollywood's headline-making accidents, but it reflects the quiet resilience that defined the era. Kirk Douglas. By the early 1990s, Kirk Douglas was already a Hollywood icon, a name etched into the history of 20th century cinema. But on February 13, 1991, he survived an event that changed him profoundly. Douglas was a passenger in a small helicopter near Los Angeles when it collided mid-air with a single-engine plane. The two young men aboard the other aircraft were tragically killed. Douglas survived, but suffered injuries to his back and knees. The shock of the experience and the weight of that loss stayed with him for the rest of his life. In later interviews, he described the incident as a kind of rebirth. It pushed him toward deeper spirituality, philanthropy, and a greater sense of purpose. Much of the charitable work that marked his later decades grew from this turning point. For a star known for his strength on screen, this moment revealed something even deeper: resilience, reflection, and a renewed commitment to life. Janet Gaynor. Janet Gaynor, the very first winner of the Best Actress Oscar, built her career on warmth, grace, and sincerity, qualities audiences cherished for decades. But late in life, she faced an unexpected tragedy that changed everything. In September 1982, Gaynor was riding in a taxi with her close friend Mary Martin when another car ignored a stop sign and crashed into them at high speed. Gaynor suffered serious internal injuries, including fractures to her ribs and pelvis, and underwent multiple surgeries. Though she survived the initial impact, her health never fully recovered, and she spent the next 2 years battling complications from the crash. Even through these challenges, Gaynor continued to paint, travel, and meet admirers whenever she could. She carried the same gentle spirit that had defined her work in the 1920s and 1930s. Her resilience reminds us that even the softest and kindest stars often faced the hardest struggles and still found their own quiet way to shine. Betty Danko. Danko performed many of the Wicked Witch's flying sequences in The Wizard of Oz, including the scenes that required a mechanically rigged, smoke-emitting broom. During preparations for the famous Surrender Dorothy skywriting scene, the internal smoke mechanism, a pressurized metal tube, overheated. It ruptured suddenly, blasting hot fumes and debris toward Danko. She was thrown from the rig and hit the stage floor, suffering painful burns and injuries to her leg and hip. Treatment took months, and the pain lingered far longer. As a stunt performer in the 1930s, she received none of the protections or recognition given to stars. Yet after recovering, she returned to her craft, carrying a small scar she later called her souvenir from Oz. Her story reminds us that many of Hollywood's bravest artists were the ones audiences never saw, the doubles who risked everything to bring movie magic to life. Margaret Hamilton. Margaret Hamilton is forever remembered as the Wicked Witch of the West, sharp, theatrical, unforgettable. But behind that iconic emerald face was a moment of genuine danger. For her fiery exit scene, Hamilton stood on a small elevator platform concealed beneath the yellow brick road. The plan was simple. Flames would erupt, red smoke would billow, and the platform would drop her safely out of sight. But on a later take, the timing failed. The flames ignited too early, setting fire to her broom, her hat, and even the copper-based green makeup covering her skin. Hamilton suffered second-degree burns on her face and third-degree burns on her right hand. Doctors had to remove the copper paint carefully to prevent infection. She spent 6 weeks recovering, and when she returned to the set, she made one firm decision: no more fire stunts. Her stunt double would handle the rest. Her story isn't just about special effects gone wrong. It's about a performer who faced real pain, survived, and finished her role with dignity. Even Hollywood's most wicked witch showed extraordinary courage under pressure. Buddy Ebsen. Buddy Ebsen was originally cast as the Tin Man in The Wizard of Oz. His light-footed dancing, slender build, and MGM contract made him a natural fit for the role. But early in production, something went terribly wrong. The shimmering silver makeup designed for him was made with aluminum dust, a substance no one realized was dangerous. After just a few days of filming, Ebsen began struggling to breathe. His lungs felt tight, his muscles cramped, and soon he was gasping for air. Doctors diagnosed him with severe aluminum dust pneumonitis, caused by microscopic particles he had inhaled. He spent weeks in the hospital on oxygen, and MGM quietly replaced him while the makeup team reformulated the paint into a safer paste. Ebsen never forgot the experience. He carried subtle breathing issues for the rest of his life. Yet, he went on to a long and successful television career, becoming beloved in the Beverly Hillbillies and Barnaby Jones. His story is a stark reminder that behind Hollywood's magic were real performers facing real danger and the courage to keep going. Buster Keaton. Buster Keaton is still celebrated as the great stone face of the silent era. A comedy legend, a fearless stuntman, and one of cinema's great innovators. But behind his stoic expression was a body that endured far more than audiences ever realized. During the filming of Sherlock Jr., 1924, Keaton performed one of his most dangerous stunts. He sprinted across the top of a moving freight car, grabbed onto the spout of a water tower, and was hit by a sudden torrent meant to wash him down to the tracks. The force was far greater than planned. He was slammed onto the railroad rails below, shook it off, and kept filming, unaware that the impact had fractured his neck. Years later, during a routine medical exam, an X-ray revealed the healed break. Keaton was stunned. He had continued filming, performing stunts, and creating some of his greatest work without ever knowing how close he had come to disaster. His survival wasn't just about enduring pain, it was about transforming risk into art. Buster Keaton reminds us that the greatest feats of silent comedy weren't merely about laughs, but about the extraordinary courage beneath them. Harold Lloyd. To audiences of the silent era, Harold Lloyd was the fearless everyman, climbing buildings, racing through chaotic city streets, and performing dazzling stunts with effortless charm. But behind those trademark horn-rimmed glasses lay a moment of real danger that few people knew about during his lifetime. In 1919, during a promotional photoshoot, Lloyd picked up what he believed was a harmless prop bomb, a simple gag for the camera. Instead, it turned out to be a real device. It went off in his hand, causing the loss of 2 fingers and leaving him with facial injuries and temporary damage to his eyesight. Some newspapers even rushed out mistaken reports, claiming he had been killed. Refusing to abandon his career, Lloyd spent months recovering and was eventually fitted with a specially designed prosthetic glove that allowed him to continue working. Remarkably, many of his most iconic films, including Safety Last, 1923, and The Freshman, 1925, were made after the accident, with his injury carefully concealed on screen. His comeback wasn't just physical, it was artistic, courageous, and deeply personal. Harold Lloyd turned a life-altering setback into one of the most inspiring chapters in early Hollywood history, proving that even the most effortless on-screen magic often came from extraordinary resilience. Susan Peters. Susan Peters was one of MGM's most promising young performers, graceful, intelligent, and an Academy Award nominee by the age of 20. Her future looked bright. But on New Year's Day 1945, everything changed during what was meant to be a peaceful hunting trip in Southern California. As Peters reached for a small rifle, it discharged unexpectedly. The bullet struck her in the spine, causing severe damage that left her paralyzed from the waist down. At just 23 years old, the trajectory of her life and career shifted in an instant. Yet Peters refused to disappear from the industry. Supported initially by MGM and driven by her own extraordinary resolve, she returned through radio performances, stage productions, and early television work, finding creative ways to continue acting from a wheelchair. Her screen career never fully regained its earlier momentum, but her dignity, discipline, and quiet strength left a lasting impression. In an industry obsessed with appearance, Susan Peters reminded the world that true grace comes from far deeper than the spotlight. Esther Williams. Known as America's swimming sweetheart, Esther Williams made her elaborate aquatic ballets look effortless. But behind the beauty was real danger, and one moment nearly ended her career. During the filming of $1 Million Mermaid, 1952, Williams performed a towering dive from a platform whose height varies across accounts, reported between 50 and 115 feet. As she fell, her angle shifted slightly. When she struck the water, the impact was brutal. She broke her neck, fracturing several cervical vertebrae. Williams spent 7 months in a full-body cast, uncertain whether she would ever swim or work again. The pain stayed with her long after filming ended, and she later described the experience as one of the most frightening of her professional life. Yet, with extraordinary discipline, she returned to MGM and completed the film. Her comeback remains a powerful reminder that behind Hollywood's glamorous illusions were athletes whose bodies paid the price for cinematic beauty. Montgomery Clift. Montgomery Clift is remembered as one of old Hollywood's most gifted, sensitive performers. Yet, his life changed forever on the night of May 12, 1956. After leaving a small dinner gathering at Elizabeth Taylor's Beverly Hills home, Clift drove down one of the narrow, twisting hairpin turns above Sunset Boulevard. His car veered off the road, crashing into a telephone pole and the hillside. The impact was devastating. Clift suffered multiple facial lacerations, a broken nose, a shattered jaw, and significant swelling that left him barely recognizable. Several witnesses rushed back to Taylor's house to alert her. She immediately ran to the scene, reached into the wrecked car, cleared his airway, and stayed with him until medical help arrived. A moment she later described as one of the most terrifying of her life. After surgery and approximately 2 months of recovery, Clift returned to finish Raintree County. The change in his appearance was subtle yet visible, a quiet dividing line between his early and later performances. Chronic pain and emotional struggles followed him for years. Yet Clift kept acting, delivering powerful work in The Misfits, Judgment at Nuremberg, and Wild River. His survival and determination remain one of the most moving examples of courage in classic Hollywood. These stories remind us that behind the glamour stood real people, hurt, tested, but unbroken. Their survival shaped not only their careers, but the legacy of old Hollywood itself.